with a few questions and an expression again of gratitude for sharing these incredibly traumatic and difficult personal stories with the public and the subcommittee. Ms. Umberger, did I hear you correctly that you endured solitary confinement for 3 weeks after giving birth without access to your infant?
Yes, sir. That is what happened. In this this room for solitary for 3 weeks, so many things were going through my mind. It was so hot in there, no air conditioning. I would lay at the bottom of the door for air. Obviously, I couldn't shower properly. I didn't even have my property. Nobody could provide any updates on how my daughter was doing. Did she pass her hearing test? You know, is she okay? Yeah, I was scared.
And you were still in the early days of healing from surgery.
Absolutely.
You testified that you were able to hold your newborn baby for just 2 hours after giving birth, and that you didn't see her again for almost 3 years. Is that right?
Yes, sir. I had 2 hours to hold and look at her. I remember thinking just how pretty she was. Like I didn't deserve her. And I carried that memory. That's what I held on to.
Ms. LeBoy, did I understand correctly from your testimony that your granddaughter was born into a prison toilet after the prison and medical staff ignored your daughter's cries for help as she went into labor?
Yes, sir. Prison staff ignored her for hours, for days. That particular morning, she gave birth into a bowl. She was ignored. My granddaughter was unresponsive. If it wasn't for my daughter's quick thinking and the cellmates, I don't think my granddaughter would be here.
And your daughter and her cellmate had to resuscitate?
Yes, they did.
Infant?
My daughter did. The cellmate was behind the wall. She heard my daughter screaming for help. And my daughter didn't know the baby wasn't crying. She was unresponsive. So the cellmate was able to tell her through the wall to tap the baby and get the fluids out.
And when the prison staff finally arrived, they ridiculed.
It was too late when they arrived. The baby was
jokes.
already. Yeah, they were very insensitive. They made jokes. She took her first swim.
After your granddaughter had been born
Yes.
into a prison toilet, that was the response of the prison
Yes,
staff.
they were very insensitive. They made jokes about it.
When you learned as a parent and as a grandparent the circumstances of your granddaughter's birth, how did you react? How did that make you feel as a human being?
Really hurts. It was painful. She actually, my first grandchild, my daughter's first child. I felt helpless to know that my daughter was scared, alone, that they ignored her, they disregarded her. They were very insensitive. So it really hurts me as her mother to know that they treated her like this.
Dr. Suffren, the subcommittee received dozens of reports, and I want to emphasize that for my colleagues on the subcommittee. We're hearing some very powerful personal testimonies. The subcommittee has received dozens of reports from currently and formerly incarcerated women that they went into labor, and then they were told they needed to wait, sometimes for days or a week, just to see a physician. You testified that access to health care may be variable, substandard, or even absent. I presume this means, doctor, but some state prisons and jails don't always have any qualified medical staff on site.
Thank you, Senator, for your question. And yes, that is true. Many jails, especially small rural jails, do not have medical staff on site 24/7. And in those cases, it's the custody officers who should always refer pregnant women with issues such as labor to a qualified medical provider or call 911. But that doesn't always happen. And a 2019 report from the Prison Policy Initiative, they reviewed policies at 50 state departments of corrections and the Federal Bureau of Prisons. They found that 24 states did not even codify that they had pre-existing arrangements for where they would take pregnant women in labor. Imagine that. No formal policy or protocol for where they would take a pregnant woman if she went into labor. They also found that 23 states' policies didn't include screening and treatment for high-risk pregnancies. But even at facilities that do have medical staff on site, the correctional officer is still the first point of contact. You can't just pick up the phone and call your obstetrician or your midwife or get yourself to a hospital labor and delivery unit. So correctional officers are tasked with triaging and being the gatekeepers to medical care, and they are sort of tasked with acting in the role of a nurse when they don't have any medical training to know when someone's having a pregnancy emergency or when they're in labor. And what that looks like, you've heard what that looks like, is that someone could be neglected either intentionally or due to the lack of knowledge of the custody staff, and she delivers in her cell.
Thank you, Dr. Suffren. Chair